My sister ruined my senior prom by stealing my projectile, until I turned the tables with a hilarious prank. Picture this. It's the last week of April in a quiet suburb of Austin, Texas, where the air smells like blooming bluebonnets and the whole town is buzzing about senior prom at Westlake High. For most of my classmates, prom is the big event. Girls are posting their dress hauls on Instagram. Guys are renting tuxes and arguing over who gets to borrow their dad's Mustang for the night. But for me, prom was just the cherry on top of a much bigger moment. The Westlake High Science Fair, where I'd been working for months to win a scholarship that could change my life. I'm Emily Carter, 18, a senior who spent the last 4 years dreaming of studying environmental engineering at UT Austin. That scholarship, $10,000 toward tuition, was my ticket to making that dream real, and I'd poured everything into my project to make sure I'd win. My project was a model of a solar-powered battery system for electric cars, something I'd been tinkering with since sophomore year, when I joined the school's STEM club and fell in love with the idea of sustainable energy. I'd spent countless nights in my garage, surrounded by wires, circuit boards, and empty cans of Dr. Pepper, trying to get the prototype just right. My dad had even let me use his old workbench, the one he used to build birdhouses with my grandpa before he passed away. It wasn't fancy, just a wooden table with paint stains and a flickering fluorescent light overhead. But it was my space, my sanctuary. I'd sketch designs in my notebook, a spiral one with a cracked cover I'd had since middle school, and test my model over and over, tweaking the solar panels until they could charge a small battery in under an hour. By the time the science fair rolled around, I was ready. I had a working prototype, a 10-slide PowerPoint presentation, and a speech I'd practiced in front of my mirror so many times I could recite it in my sleep. But there was one thing I hadn't counted on: my sister Caitlin. Caitlin's 20, a sophomore at Austin Community College, where she's majoring in communications and spends most of her time posting TikToks of her cheerleading routines. She's always been the golden child in our family, blonde, bubbly, the kind of girl who can charm anyone with a smile. Mom and Dad have always doted on her, framing every trophy she's ever won, from her middle school spelling bee to her high school cheerleading nationals. Me? I'm the quiet one, the smart one, as Mom always says. But my achievements, like getting straight A's or winning the regional STEM competition last year, never seemed to get the same attention. "Oh, Emily, that's great," Dad would say, barely looking up from his iPad where he'd be scrolling through ESPN. Meanwhile, Caitlin would walk in with a B on a pop quiz, and Mom would throw a whole celebration, complete with her famous chocolate chip cookies. It never really bothered me growing up. I mean, Caitlin and I were close, even if we were total opposites. She'd let me borrow her glittery nail polish for school dances, and I'd help her with her algebra homework when she was failing freshman year. But things started to change when Caitlin went to college. She got competitive, like she couldn't stand the idea of me getting any attention, even for something as nerdy as a science fair. A few weeks before the fair, she came home for spring break, her duffel bag stuffed with laundry for Mom to wash, and saw my project on the workbench in the garage. "What's this, Em?" she asked, poking at the solar panels with a manicured nail. I explained it to her, the science fair, the scholarship, how much it meant to me. She just smirked, flipping her hair over her shoulder. "Cute," she said, her tone dripping with sarcasm. "But don't you think it's a little basic? I mean, solar panels? Everyone's doing that." I brushed it off, figuring she was just being Caitlin, always a little snarky, but harmless. I had no idea how wrong I was. The day before the science fair, I was putting the finishing touches on my presentation, double-checking my slides on my laptop while Mom made dinner, her famous Tex-Mex casserole, the kind with extra cheese and Fritos on top that we only had on special occasions. I was in the living room, my laptop balanced on the coffee table next to a stack of prom magazines Caitlin had left behind, when my phone buzzed with a text from my best friend Mia. "Em, you're not gonna believe this," the message read, followed by a screenshot from Caitlin's Instagram story. It was a photo of my Project Me solar battery model, sitting on the workbench in our garage with the caption, "Working on something big for the Westlake Science Fair. Can't wait to show it off. Number STEM girl, number future engineer." My heart stopped. Caitlin was entering the science fair? With my project? I felt like the room was spinning, the smell of casserole suddenly making me nauseous. She'd stolen my idea, my months of hard work, and was passing it off as her own just to win, just to be the center of attention again. And the worst part? The science fair was tomorrow, the same day as prom, and I had no idea how I was going to fix this. I sat there on the couch, staring at my phone, the screenshot of Caitlin's Instagram story burning into my eyes. My hands were shaking, my breath coming in short, sharp bursts as I tried to process what I was seeing. My project, the solar battery model I'd spent months perfecting, the one that was supposed to win me a scholarship to UT Austin, was now on Caitlin's Instagram, with her claiming it as her own. I felt a wave of anger and betrayal wash over me, so intense I could barely think straight. How could she do this to me? We were sisters. Sure, we'd had our fights, like the time she borrowed my favorite hoodie and spilled Dr. Pepper on it, or when I accidentally deleted her cheerleading playlist before a big game, but this was different. This wasn't just a petty sibling squabble. This was my future, my dream, and she'd stolen it without a second thought. I stormed into the kitchen, where Mom was pulling the casserole out of the oven, the cheese bubbling and golden on top. Caitlin was sitting at the counter, scrolling through her phone, her nails painted a sparkly pink that matched her cheerleading uniform. "Caitlin, what the hell is this?" I demanded, holding up my phone with the screenshot. She looked up, her blue eyes wide with fake innocence, and tilted her head.
"What's what, Em?"
she asked, her voice all sugar and syrup, like she hadn't just stabbed me in the back. "This," I said, shoving the phone in her face. "My project. On your Instagram? You're entering the science fair with my work?" Mom set the casserole down on a trivet, wiping her hands on her apron, the one with little cacti on it that Dad had bought her for Mother's Day. "Girls, what's going on?" she asked, her brow furrowing. Caitlin sighed dramatically, like I was the one being unreasonable, and put her phone down. "Okay, fine, I used your idea," she said, shrugging. "But it's not a big deal, Em. I needed something for the fair, and your project was just sitting there. I figured I'd make it better, add some flair, you know? I mean, you're not even that into science fairs, right? You're more about prom and stuff." I stared at her, my mouth open, unable to believe what I was hearing. "Not that into science fairs?" I repeated, my voice rising. "Caitlin, I've been working on this for months. It's for a scholarship, a $10,000 scholarship I need for college. And you think I'm just gonna let you take it?" Mom stepped between us, holding up her hands like a referee. "Okay, let's all calm down," she said, her voice firm but gentle. "Caitlin, is this true? Did you take Emily's project?" Caitlin rolled her eyes, crossing her arms. "I didn't take it, Mom. I borrowed the idea. I made my own model, sort of. I just used her plans as a starting point. It's not like she owns solar panels." I felt like I'd been punched in the gut. "You made your own model?" I asked, my voice shaking. "Caitlin, I saw the photo. That's my prototype, down to the blue painter's tape I used to hold the panels together. You didn't make anything, you stole it." Mom turned to Caitlin, her expression stern. "Caitlin, if this is true, you need to fix this," she said. "You can't use your sister's work. That's not fair." Caitlin huffed, standing up and grabbing her phone. "Fine, whatever," she said, her tone dripping with annoyance. "I'll figure something out. But honestly, Em, you're being so dramatic. It's just a stupid science fair." She walked out of the kitchen, her flip-flops slapping against the tile, leaving me standing there, my hands clenched into fists. Mom put a hand on my shoulder, her touch warm but not comforting. "I'm sorry, sweetie," she said softly. "I'll talk to her, but you need to focus on tomorrow. It's a big day, Prom, and the science fair. Don't let this ruin it for you." I nodded, but inside, I was seething. Prom was supposed to be this magical night. I'd spent weeks picking out a dress, a shimmery emerald green one that Mia said made my eyes pop, and I'd even convinced my crush, Ryan, to go with me as friends. But now, all I could think about was Caitlin and how she'd ruined everything. I went back to the living room, my laptop still open on the coffee table, and tried to focus on my presentation, but my mind kept racing. I couldn't let her get away with this. I had to do something, but what? The science fair was tomorrow morning, and prom was right after, in the evening. I didn't have time to rebuild my project from scratch, and even if I did, Caitlin would still be there, parading around with my work, charming the judges with her smile while I got pushed to the side, just like always. That night, I barely slept, tossing and turning in my bed, the fairy lights above my headboard casting a soft glow on the ceiling. I kept replaying Caitlin's words in my head. It's just a stupid science fair, and the more I thought about it, the angrier I got. By the time the sun came up, I'd made a decision. I wasn't going to let Caitlin win it this time. I didn't know exactly how I was going to stop her, but I knew I had to try. I got out of bed, pulled on my favorite jeans and a Westlake High t-shirt, and headed downstairs, my mind buzzing with ideas. Prom might have been the big event for everyone else, but for me, today was about more than a dance. It was about taking back what was mine. The Westlake High Science Fair was held in the school gym, a cavernous space that smelled like floor wax and sweat, with folding tables set up in rows and posters taped to the walls advertising prom a night under the stars. With glittery star decals that were already peeling off, the gym was packed with students, parents, and teachers, all milling around, sipping coffee from styrofoam cups and snapping photos of the projects. I'd set up my table near the bleachers, my solar battery model front and center, the blue painter's tape still holding the panels together. I'd brought my laptop for the presentation, and I'd even made a little sign with my project title, Solar Powered Future. Sustainable charging for electric vehicles. In bold letters I'd printed at home on Dad's ancient printer. I was nervous, my palms sweaty as I adjusted my model for the 100th time, but I was ready. I'd worked too hard to let Caitlin ruin this for me. Then I saw her. Caitlin walked into the gym, her cheerleading confidence on full display, wearing a bright pink sundress that matched her nail polish and a smile that could have lit up the whole room. She was carrying a project board and my heart sank when I saw it. It was my model, the exact same one I'd built, but she'd added a few cheap decorations, some glittery stickers, and a pink ribbon tied around the base. Like that made it hers. Her project board had the same title as mine, but she'd added a selfie of herself in the corner, winking at the camera with the caption, "STEM Queen in the Making." I felt a surge of anger so intense I had to grip the edge of my table to keep from storming over there. She set up her table just a few spots down from mine, chatting with the judges like they were old friends, her laugh echoing through the gym. I overheard her telling one of them, a middle-aged guy in a polo shirt, I've always been passionate about sustainability. This project is my baby." I wanted to scream. The judging started at 10 a.m., and I went first, giving my presentation to a panel of 3 judges: Mr. Thompson, my AP physics teacher, Mrs. Rivera, a local engineer, and the guy in the polo shirt, who turned out to be a professor from UT Austin. I explained my project, walking them through the design, the solar panels, the battery system, and how it could help reduce carbon emissions. I was nervous, my voice shaking a little at first, but I found my rhythm, and by the end, Mr. Thompson was nodding, a small smile on his face. "Impressive work, Emily," he said, scribbling something on his clipboard. "Very thorough. I felt a flicker of hope maybe I could still win, even with Caitlin stealing my idea. But then it was Caitlin's turn. I watched from my table, my arms crossed, as she launched into her presentation, her voice bright and confident. She barely talked about the science, focusing instead on how cute the model looked with her decorations and how she'd always been inspired by the environment. The judges ate it up, Mrs. Rivera even laughed at one of her jokes, something about how she'd channeled her inner Elon Musk. I felt sick. She was going to win. I could feel it, and there was nothing I could do about it. The scholarship, my dream of UT Austin, it was slipping through my fingers, and all I could do was stand there, watching her take it from me. That's when I got an idea. It was risky, maybe even a little crazy, but I was desperate. I remembered something Mia had said a few weeks ago, when we were working on our projects together in the library. "You should add a backup slide to your presentation," she'd said, pushing her glasses up her nose. "Something funny, in case you need to lighten the mood." I'd laughed it off at the time, but I'd made the slide anyway joke version of my project, with a drawing of a solar battery made out of cardboard pizza boxes from Domino's, complete with a fake graph showing 100% cheesy efficiency. It was silly, something I'd never planned to show anyone, but now it gave me an idea. If Caitlin wanted to play dirty, I could play dirtier. I waited until the judges were done with the first round of presentations and announced a 15-minute break before the awards ceremony. Everyone was milling around, grabbing snacks from the refreshment table, donuts from Krispy Kreme and lukewarm coffee in a big silver urn, while the judges huddled in the corner, comparing notes. I slipped over to Caitlin's table, where she'd left her laptop open, her presentation still on the screen. My heart was pounding as I glanced around, making sure no one was watching, and plugged in my USB drive. I swapped out her final slide, the one with her conclusion about the project's impact, for my joke slide, the one with the pizza box battery. I knew it was petty, maybe even wrong, but I was so angry, so hurt, that I didn't care. If she was going to steal my project, I was going to make sure she looked like a fool doing it. The awards ceremony started at noon, just as the gym was starting to clear out for prom setup. The janitors were already bringing in star-shaped decorations and string lights for the dance, and I could hear the prom committee arguing about where to put the photo booth. I stood by my table, my stomach in knots, as the judges took the stage, a small platform at the far end of the gym, with a microphone that kept squeaking every time someone spoke. Mr. Thompson stepped up first, thanking everyone for participating, while Caitlin stood a few feet away, smoothing her dress and smiling like she'd already won. I clenched my fists, my nails digging into my palms, waiting for the moment I'd been planning. Before announcing the winners, the judges invited the top 3 finalists to give a quick recap of their projects for the audience. Caitlin was first, and I watched as she walked up to the stage, her laptop under her arm, her confidence unshakable. She started her presentation, the same one she'd given earlier, all charm and no substance, and I held my breath as she got to the final slide. The screen lit up with my joke slide, the drawing of the pizza box battery, the fake graph, the words 100% cheesy efficiency in big bold letters. The gym went silent for a second, then erupted in laughter. Caitlin froze, her face turning bright red as she stared at the screen, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. "I don't know what this is," she stammered, her voice shaking. "This isn't my slide." The judges exchanged confused looks, and Mr. Thompson raised an eyebrow. "Caitlin, are you saying this isn't part of your project?" he asked, his tone skeptical. I stepped forward, my heart racing but my voice steady. "It's not her project at all," I said, loud enough for everyone to hear. "That's my model. She stole it from me. I built that solar battery system and I can prove it." I held up my notebook, the one with all my sketches and notes, dated months back, and handed it to Mrs. Rivera. She flipped through it, her expression shifting from confusion to understanding, and nodded. "This does match the design," she said, looking at Caitlin. "Caitlin, can you explain this?" Caitlin's face crumpled, tears welling up in her eyes, and she shook her head. "I just wanted to win," she whispered, her voice breaking. "I didn't think it would be a big deal." The judges deliberated for a few minutes, whispering among themselves, while the audience murmured, some people pulling out their phones to record the drama. Finally, Mr. Thompson stepped back to the mic. "After reviewing the evidence, we've decided to disqualify Caitlin Carter from the competition," he said, his voice firm. "The first place scholarship goes to Emily Carter for her outstanding work on sustainable energy." The gym erupted in applause, and I felt a wave of relief and pride wash over me. I'd done it, I'd won the scholarship, and Caitlin had been exposed. But as I looked at her, standing there with tears streaming down her face, I didn't feel as good as I thought I would. She looked small, broken, and for the first time, I saw how much she'd been struggling to live up to the golden child image our parents had put on her. Prom that night was a blur of lights and music. The gym transformed into a starry wonderland with a DJ spinning top 40 hits and a dance floor packed with my classmates. I wore my emerald green dress, my hair in loose waves thanks to Mia's curling iron, and danced with Ryan under the twinkling lights, laughing as he tried to do the Macarena and failed miserably. But I couldn't stop thinking about Caitlin. She'd left the science fair in tears, and I hadn't seen her since. When I got home that night, my heels in my hand and my makeup smudged from dancing, I found her sitting on the back porch, still in her pink sundress, staring at the stars. "Caitlin?" I said softly, sitting down next to her. She didn't look at me, but I could see the tear tracks on her cheeks. "I'm sorry, Em," she whispered, her voice hoarse. "I didn't mean to hurt you. I felt like I was losing Mom and Dad's attention and I got jealous. It was stupid." I sighed, the anger I'd felt earlier melting away. "It was stupid," I said, but my tone was gentle. "But I get it. We've both been trying to be what they want us to be. Maybe we should just be ourselves, you know?" She nodded, a small smile breaking through her tears, and I reached over to hug her, the cool night air wrapping around us. The next day, we had a family barbecue to celebrate my scholarship. Dad grilled burgers on the patio, Mom made her famous lemonade, and Caitlin and I sat together, laughing as we flipped through old photo albums, promising to never let jealousy come between us again. Prom might have been the night everyone else talked about, but for me, it was the day I took back my dream and got my sister back too.